I am here with Brent Ashworth in his historical artifact store right here in Provo, Utah. And I'm excited about the person that we're going to talk about today because it's not unusual for each country to have their own hero or someone of national prominence. But Brent, it's very rare for someone to break through and get worldwide acclaim. Yes. And Edmund Hillary is one of those individuals. Yes. So can you tell us, because I know if you look at your artifacts in your collection, it's predominantly Americans and American history, but you have something incredible here from Edmund Hillary. Why? Sure. What attracted you to that and the history?
Well, I like people that climb heights.
Well, you found the right one.
Yeah, and when I was a little boy, Hillary was a worldwide hero, not just in New Zealand where he was born and raised. He was a beekeeper's son, and he loved beekeeping. You know, he would work at that when he wasn't doing other things. He enlisted during World War II into the New Zealand Air Force and was a hero, nearly killed during that time. And so I guess he had a natural affinity of taking on risks, and like many do, and took on mountain climbing. In the late 40s, he started climbing peaks, including the tallest peak in New Zealand that I can't pronunciate, and Mount Oliver later, and on other continents. And then he became part of this huge British expedition, was then part of the Commonwealth, to climb Everest.
Well, let's talk about that because we all remember Edmund Hillary because he was what he did, right? The first person to get to the highest point on the planet.
Exactly.
But what amazes me about the history is that the British had tried, along with a lot of other people, for a long, long time to get to the top, and they weren't successful.
No.
So I think it's incredible that, you know, we remember people and countries for their success rather than their failures, and I think there's a lesson in there for all of us.
It's a little like the United States and the Panama Canal. I mean, the fact is that Britain wanted to get somebody on top of the world's highest peak for years, and there were many unsuccessful attempts. In fact, there were several people that we still wonder about if they ever made the peak. You know, they found their body down below years later. But in the case of Sir Edmund Hillary, he and his Sherpa guide Tenzing were part of the 1953 expedition to finally do it. This included 400 climbers in that group of British people. You know, they had 10,000 pounds of goods. They had 20 Sherpa guides. I mean, it was huge.
10,000 pounds.
10,000 pounds of supplies.
It's like traveling with my wife and kids. I mean, that's.
Well, you got 400 people in the 400 climbers. You know.
Well, you have something amazing from that expedition. If you could just explain what this is, that's incredible.
Well, this is an ice pick. And this is one that is believed to have been taken by Tenzing and Hillary to the top of Mount Everest. He signed it later. He would only sign those that were involved in one of his climbing expeditions. And the thought is, from the registered number and so on, this one, that it is one that he used on that famous expedition.
That is absolutely incredible. And you know what it strikes me about this? If you go out and get hiking equipment or climbing equipment today, it's the latest technologies, the latest polymers, and they test it. And here, this looks very simple and rudimentary.
Primitive.
Right, and to think that this was on top of the world. Well, let's talk about that.
Sure.
Hillary gets to the top of the world.
Right.
Tenzing is there. They weren't the first team chosen to make the attempt.
In fact, the British team had failed a couple hours before, 48 hours before.
So he gets to the top. He's on top of the world.
Right.
Why don't we have any pictures of Edmund Hillary?
Well, good question. There's been a lot of discussion on that. I think what happened was that he decided he wanted to take a picture of Tenzing, you know, the Sherpa that got him to the top. And the story goes that Tenzing offered to take his picture too, but I think Hillary just wanted to get off the mountain. I think he was amazed that they made it, and he wasn't thinking so much in terms of history because he'd already taken Tenzing's picture. And then that's not the only photo. He took a bunch of other photos up on top to prove that they were there. Unfortunately, when Tenzing offered to take his photo, he said, let's not bother with it. And,
I have to think that's an incredible story because we live in a society where, you know, if you're eating a Big Mac at McDonald's, you take a selfie, right?
Sure.
You want to record everything. Now, here's a guy who gets to the top of the world, and
right.
he says, "I'll pass. I don't need the photo."
Don't need it.
Yeah. Now, you had brought up some things about what he did after Everest, which I think are absolutely incrable. Do you want to share a few of those
Well, sure.
things?
One of the great ones is that he went on later expeditions that went to the South Pole first. They went with a big group of people there. And then he went with the American astronaut and first moonwalker, Neil Armstrong, to the North Pole, later. So he became, after he and Neil got to the exact spot of the North Pole, he became the first human to have been to both poles and the highest peak.
Absolutely incredible. I want to thank Brent and Charlene Ashworth and the Colonial Flag Foundation for their support of The Real Story.